Episode 27 of the Guerrilla Social Work Podcast. Welcome back to the show. Mr. Mace is going to kick us off with our new advertiser.
Yeah, this episode of the podcast is always brought to you by Alpha Counseling and Treatment. Alpha Counseling is the largest and most respected treatment provider in the great state of Utah for clients currently resolving a sexual offense conviction and really any sexual behavior problems for that matter. So regardless of what you got, come to us. We'll take care of it. Alpha is dedicated to the healthy development and healing of our clients. Alpha is committed to the providing evidence-based practice that provides the greatest likelihood of our clients making positive changes and improving their lives. So make a commitment to yourself and call Alpha Counseling today at 801-645-5455. Email us at info@utahsbesttherapy.com and visit our website at the always modest www.utahsbesttherapy.com. And this episode of the podcast is also brought to you by Bonnie Roo's Marmoset Pelts. Bonnie Roo's Marmoset Pelts are synonymous with genuine craftsmanship and uncompromising quality. Our focus is providing women and men with the most exquisite marmoset pelts in our carefully curated collection. Our products are designed with modern sensibility and a sophisticated, timeless aesthetic crafted to be lived in and worn in. Remember, the leather biker jacket that traveled across 5 countries with the most incredible European vacation ever, or the beautiful red handbag that you carried out on your first date, or the steel gray wool coat you wore for your final job interview that resulted in your dream job. We remember how we felt in that moment and how our marmoset pelts made us feel. We believe every pelt in our assortment has a story to tell, and it's you who creates that story, the journey of who you are and where you've been. We are proud of our heritage, but we are continuously evolving. We strive to explore new dimensions, create new looks, and seek out new ways to inspire and engage with style seekers. We are Bonnie Roo's Marmoset Pelts. You can find Bonnie Roo's Marmoset Pelts at www.virtualbubblewrap.com. So, who are we interviewing tonight, Justin? Our buddy Chris.
Bonnie Roo. Oh,
they sure take their marmoset pelts serious. That's good. That's good. You know, you got to have conviction.
For what you do.
Coat. Yeah,
some passion.
So we're going to be interviewing on this episode of the podcast. We're going to be interviewing a former client. This is on our Villains to Victory series. The name is Chris, and so without further ado, let's kick it off.
I guess we're kicking it off now.
There we go.
That's where I would have plugged the intro music in. You're getting to watch us do it real time.
Yeah.
Wait,
all right.
Did you, were you mainly out of Salt Lake or Ogden?
Salt Lake.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Are we doing the interview now?
I don't know.
Oh, okay, let's do it.
We are, yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah. This is great.
Yeah, this is the first time I've met you, I think, as far as like shaking your hand and officially. I might have covered a group that you were in and heard me prattle on about something cool. Hopefully your life was bettered by me specifically.
I don't think so.
Swing and a miss.
Chris is a pretty famous client. We were talking earlier before we started recording. And this was it was actually pretty amazing. So when we do you remember how we were expanding to Salt Lake and you were like, nah, everybody will drive to Ogden. I was like, no, they won't, dude. Like, I was like, you're pretty and all, but I'm just saying, nobody's driving to Ogden to meet with you. If they
I could have brought them.
So, and we got in, we got into that office that was in that underground garage. It was a nice office,
That's
folks.
Right.
Don't like think it's like.
It's all right.
It was an all right office.
Lot.
Yeah. Chris was the very first client to ever step in that building and the very last client to ever step out of that building.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That sounds bad.
Yeah, so you're like a veteran of this game.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a good game to be a veteran of.
Well, no, I mean, I guess not. Yeah.
No, it's good. Chris has come a long way. So, but yeah. So, and you met Justin, yeah? Before? Okay.
Yeah, it was like right when I first started. He was in some other groups. I was going to say he was always
he was
one of
in
the ones.
that old building too.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Yeah, Chris was always someone in group that would actually talk about relevant stuff and be real in the group and not just BS. Like actually talk about what was going
It was
on.
quiet most of the time, I think, but I guess when I did chime in, it was gold. Yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Well, we appreciate you coming on here, man. So yeah. So we'll I don't know. What questions do you guys have for Chris?
I was just wondering, when did you actually complete the program?
So yeah, we're just talking about that. It's been about it would be about 2.5 years, because it was about a January or February when I was off probation. I just had probation. So it would have been about 2.5 years ago, because I've been working where I've worked, where I'm at now. It's been about 2 years, and I would have started that same year. So it's been about 2.5 years, I think, then.
How have things gone for you since, just in terms of like keeping the wheels on the bus and just keeping your life going the direction that you had kind of set out to?
Well, a lot of my goals, and May still remember this because we talked a ton about this even back then, was just getting back to being with my kids, the fighting with the ex. I have 2 exes, married twice, but the first one specifically, a lot of court stuff had been going on, and even though I was talking about it with him 2.5 years ago, just the past 6 months, finally it's over.
Really?
Finally.
Wow.
Yes,
Wow.
It's taken that long. I mean, mediation, court. I mean, we went clear to we had commissioner, went clear to a judge, and now finally I've been having my just my every other weekend and overnights, and the minimum standard time is finally happening.
Good for you, man. That's really good to hear. Yeah. I remember that was a really big struggle for you. There were so many, and it I think anybody listening to this, in terms of reunification, I just wanted to make sure because Chris was talking about getting back with his kids. So, so in this case, like your children weren't your victims or anything like that.
No,
right.
No.
Nevertheless, though, for obvious reasons, for anybody who's listening, sometimes probation and parole prohibit any, contact with anybody under the age of 18. But when there's kids involved, it becomes a little bit more, there's another dynamic there. And so they have a process called reunification, and this has been kind of reviewed and sanctioned, and it's a very, pretty spelled out process of how this goes. And I know we had started that, and we had pretty much followed through with everything we could while in treatment.
Yeah, what we could have done. There was just that's part of what I was trying to throw to the ex that was being so resistant. Is when I was in therapy, it's like, hey, I've got one more thing. I've got these, I got the PO and the therapist has these other people that can monitor me with this situation, and she just chose to ignore any of that. She was going everything she could to just, no overnights, you'll always be supervised. But this was just, like I say, this past 6 months, she was still going for that. She wouldn't budge on anything.
And what was her rationale? Like what?
Just because I'm on the registry and my charges, it was enough to say that I should never be alone with my daughter, and I never. No, I always be supervised in some degree or another. Although with my son, because once I was off probation and done with the therapy here, there was nothing binding legally or anything out there that was saying I still needed that, but yet she was still holding on to it even though it was a past thing. And that's where I was like, okay, I'm taking you to court then, and I'm going to hold you in contempt if I can.
So as far as the court system goes, and in terms of our work, in terms of assessing risk, and the likelihood of any risk potential, adult probation and parole, the Utah Department of Corrections, and certainly Alpha Counseling said he's good to go. This was her saying, nah, I just don't feel comfortable with it, and I'm going to...
Yeah, I tried to offer her tools, because I also have a son with the other ex, and she was more willing to look at those things, because the tools I had a letter from you that was just kind of... it was just broad enough to say he completed treatment as low risk. But then I had my psychosexual evaluation, which that's the big one, and that was very favorable. It was done by Larry Fox, and they even tried to the one ex tried to counter, break it apart, like, oh, what about this you said, and what about that you said, and then Larry Fox came right back and said, well, this is why I said it, and this is what it means. But that was favorable. It said things like no pedophilic interests and things like that, which are in my favor. So. Even presenting those things, it wasn't enough to say, well, I'm okay with this, She just wanted to still because I'm on the registry,
Yeah. And let me just say for the listeners, and I'm not trying to hog all the time, dudes, pipe in when you want to. The term psychosexual, sometimes you listen to this, you're like, what is that? It's not like a biopsychosocial that you do in kind of like a normal intake assessment for any type of mental health clinic or something like that. The psychosexual is a pretty high level type of examination, and it's pretty limited in the state of Utah. In Utah, there's only allowed to be PhDs or higher are allowed to do this assessment because of the level of examination and also the implications in terms of the recommendations. And so Chris was referencing something that they do test for, sexual interests and sexual arousal. And so what they're trying to determine is, are there any what we would consider deviant sexual arousal? And to be clear on that, deviant sometimes, I don't know, deviant's really defined really weird. Like some people think anybody but missionary position's deviant, right?
Well, I mean, it's a statistical term that's kind of been pirated and given a different connotation. It's wildly misunderstood as what deviant truly means.
Right. So deviant, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't want to miss this. Deviant arousal would be arousal to obviously a situation where a person couldn't consent. So that would include obviously force, or a person who is too young or maybe mentally disabled to consent to that, or maybe intoxicated beyond their ability to consent. And then obviously force or a weapon, or any arousal toward, the victimization in the first place, or kind of offense-related fetishes, in other words, right? So
pretty good brush strokes covered all that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, am I missing anything there?
No, that's...
Okay. Good. So back to this though. So you took that examination and they said there was none of those deviant interests, and nevertheless it was low across the board, and there was no specific recommendations that you shouldn't be allowed to have contact with children at this point.
No, exactly. I mean, it was favorable. Is the best way to describe it. And so yeah, it was because part of it too is the test usually involves a penile plethysmograph, although when I met with him and talked about past ones that I'd done and things like that, he didn't actually recommend that I take one at that time because he just based on the conversation him and I had about it. Mm-hmm. But things like that are also part of it, and so and that test obviously, if it's going to show that I have an arousal, with as fun as that test is, if I have an arousal to a child or something, then child's voice or whatever's in the test, then yeah, that would have been put in there. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But
yeah. So, I mean, maybe I think some people listen to this who may not know a lot about it. They might be kind of, I don't know, like the idea that reunification would happen. I think people might be uncomfortable with that concept, right?
I was just going to weigh in with my best attempt at an outside perspective, and which
like a devil's advocate perspective.
Well, I guess just maybe somebody that's, so look, Chris, you know yourself, you know your intentions, and after having gone through a treatment program, you pretty well have the interpersonal insight to, make these decisions and to truly determine if, you've still got it in you to hurt people or pose any risk to your kids. And you know that about yourself. You're able to decisively say, no, that's not the case. You're not going to hurt your kids. Yeah. Mace was your therapist, and he knows all the nuances that go into assessing risk. He knows all the different types of risk. And through him being your therapist, he got to know you, pretty well too, probably not quite as well as you know yourself, but as much as you were willing to let him see. And if you were his client, I'm sure that you opened up to him quite a bit. So when you guys are talking about this process and going through the courts and everything, and, I can hear some indignation in your voice a little bit about being put through the ringer unfairly by your ex, I'm assuming. And I understand that. I have clients going through the same process, and perhaps themselves are also getting drugged through the mud unnecessarily. But for people probably listening in are likely feeling themselves side with your ex and saying, well, of course I wouldn't want my children to be around a convicted sex offender. That's madness. And I guess I'm wondering how, like, what you did to maintain the patience, or like if you felt like you had to like explain yourself certain ways, or maybe if you had to try to understand the perspective of her in being patient, or just sort of how you navigated that while keeping your cool, while following the rules. It's just, yeah. Anything you can say to that?
So it basically comes down to if people are thinking like what you're saying, well, that makes sense, because that to me, having gone through this process, that's someone who is just putting that, to use your word earlier, that paintbrush statement over, well, all of these guys are the same type of guy and they all think the same. They are not considering the individuality of people, right? And that, as Mace taught me in a therapy session one day, is you are not your worst mistake, right?
Perfect.
So
I said that?
Yeah.
Wow.
I like it.
Quote it, son.
And thank God we're not our worst mistake, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, then it comes down to, you talk about the patience I used and things like that. Yes, I knew who I was, and my ex is saying that, well, you're this that I don't like. Well, then there's the tools that I learned through the therapy. There's the other tools, the psychosexual evaluation, and go, you don't have to take my word for it. I'm going to let a professional, I'm going to let his opinion then tell you. So it's not just me going, hey, wait a second, I deserve this time and everything else, because I didn't know. I didn't go into the tests that I did going, I assumed it to a degree. But at the end of the day, his opinion may have been way different than what I thought it would be. And then I got to go, crap. Now, how am I gonna convince her now? So that's the thing, is I got to go. I'm an honest person. I've passed my polygraph tests, my psychosexual evaluation. I've at the time when I was trying to do it, I have my therapist and my probation officer saying it's okay for him to have the parent time. Then I'm going, I have other people, not just my word, going for it. And so doesn't that have some value? So if someone listening in then going, of course, these shouldn't be around as kids, you go, well, are there other people out there that maybe trust the situation? I mean, my PO, he's trusting it because he's trusting Mace, And although Mace said to me one time, to a degree, the courts or people or whatever, they're going to go, well, it's his therapist, so that only has so much weight because the therapist is obviously in the client's behalf, but the ones that aren't necessarily are the people doing a polygraph test or the person doing a psychosexual evaluation or a probation officer. I mean, those guys. Yeah. And so I felt like those were enough tools for this to go in my favor. And it may not be for every guy. It may not be, depending on who they are and where they're at.
What you're saying is actually consistent with the way that we score risk. So when we're doing a risk assessment or a psychosexual, which, by the way, am I the only idiot that, like, for the first few months of your career, I thought like psycho meant crazy. So like you're going in for a crazy sexual assessment. Psychosexual. Yeah, I can't be the only idiot. But some of the things we look at in order to score an item. So like, for instance, one of the risk factors that we score is sexual risk management. Mm-hmm. And we're given instructions on what we're supposed to rely upon to determine if, you, Chris, have managed your sexual risk very well. And some of it is client self-report. So what you told Mace went into his factoring of your sexual risk management, but so did your polygraph. So did outside data. Like I don't know if Mace had access to your pre-sentence investigation report, which I suppose we should talk about today. But it's not just what you say that Mace is basing his judgment on your ability to manage that specific risk factor. It's other things as well. And so when you're saying that in an effort to, I guess, prove yourself,
sure,
you have your own opinion, what you have to say, and the way you represent yourself and the way you interface with various agencies, but also you're relying upon other people that don't have an emotional or financial tie to you to make the call. And so I think that's a solid answer, because here's what sucks is like when you're going through the process, until you recover a lot of the trust that you lost with your offense, your words kind of crap to people, and so you have to bank on other people.
Build that trust back up. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Time. Yeah. Oh yeah. The only thing with that is though, so you can only do so much in terms of rebuilding that trust, right?
Yeah.
So this is something for I think clinicians and clients to really kind of identify with, and this is where I think you had an incredible amount of patience with this, like kind of Jeff was saying, because the tendency is guys get frustrated with this process, and then they start to act out behaviorally because they start to feel like this isn't going anywhere and what they're doing isn't worth it, and they start to deteriorate, and then we have violations and more problems, and really that's setting them back further, from these things, and it's not indicative necessarily that they're going off the rails. It could just be in response to the emotional problems that they are experiencing as a result of these. But, when I look at all these different sources of data that tell me, it's not just Chris's word. He's not coming in and saying, I'm good, Mace. Oh, okay, you're low risk now. Like, that's not how it works. Like, we're not just, doing a dog and pony show here. We're multiple sources of information are coming in to do this. And really what that tells us is that Chris is trustworthy in his behaviors. That's what it really defines for us. Trust is a different concept, but Chris is certainly showing us that he's trustworthy, right? But the trust piece is...
How are you defining that? Like, I didn't know there was a difference.
So trustworthy is things that you can measure. Like what, for you, for example, like, okay, if you're looking at a client, what are some things that you determine about that client behaviorally? Things that you can actually measure that say they're trustworthy.
Initially, I'll start out with attendance a lot of times. Are they getting to session on time?
Are they coming to session? Are they coming to sessions? Are they coming to sessions on time? Those are great. What other ones?
Are they coming prepared?
Do they do their assignments?
Yeah.
Okay. What else?
I guess I'd look for their behaviors to match up with what they're telling me, and that's usually something that takes time to determine. So,
okay.
Maybe I could look at polygraph results for that. That's a little too obvious, though, right?
So, is there congruity in their behaviors? Does their word match up with their behaviors too?
Primarily, that's the
if you're talking to the PO
task I'm trying to achieve. Yeah.
If you're talking to the PO, does what you're seeing or hearing from the client match up with what the PO's observations are? Right.
Right.
Okay. So I think a good practice sometimes is to sit down and say, all right, well, so what does constitute trustworthiness in another individual? I usually say, write down 10 things in another individual. Right. All that shows is that they're trustworthy. And you could do it on a timetable too. I say, okay, I'm going to observe these behaviors for 3 months. I think we talked about this when it came to, because you were at the time when we were working together, you were trying to rebuild a relationship, right? When we first started.
Well, it kind of changed from... The one that I was trying to rebuild when I first started was just with my second ex.
Right. But you were still married at the time.
Yes.
Yeah, you were.
Yeah.
You were. Because I have a funny story about that. I'll come back to that. But okay. So all those are behavioral indicators that this person is trustworthy. Trust, though, comes from me being vulnerable to you. So if I determine, based on my assessment of you as an individual, that you're trustworthy, I then have to make myself vulnerable to you. And I have to say, okay, I'm going to give him some information that could hurt me. I'm going to rely on him to follow through on something that could cause me problems. I'm going, whatever it is, right? I'm going to enter into a relationship with this person that I feel like I have care for or whatever. And I'm now making myself vulnerable to you, because now if you choose to do something to me, now you're taking trustworthy behaviors and you're going back on that, and that's when I feel betrayed.
So you're trusting yourself to be vulnerable, and you're basing those decisions on my trustworthiness as evidenced by behaviors.
Yeah, that's right. And I always coach clients on that too. I tell them, I just acknowledge the fact that they have no reason to trust me from the very beginning, but I want to coach them and say, okay, well, what are trustworthy behaviors, right?
I've heard you say this before.
And I want you to measure that against me. So I want you to pay attention to what I say and what I do, and that at least tells you that I'm trustworthy. And then you might disclose a little bit of information about yourself, or maybe something that makes you vulnerable. And then you have to see how I handle it. And then that develops trust over time.
I remember what you're talking about, by the way, now.
Well,
I had to think back, but yes, I was married at the time, and I remember what you're talking about.
So in that relationship, like this is kind of a testament of your dedication to some of these things, because it was a group therapy session, and you said you wanted some feedback from the group. And we got into this conversation, and you laid it out and you said, here's all the things that I'm doing right now because
to build trust,
because there was infidelity, right? And then she says, these are the things that I need, which is actually really nice. If you were like in a relationship where you're unfaithful to your partner, how many times do they say, okay, here's the list of criteria I need to trust you? That hardly ever happens. And I wish it would, because sometimes it's like, well, I'll know it when I feel it. Well, no, that's not good. Like, I need to.
There's no moment of just all of a sudden, I trust him again. It's kind of going back to what you were talking. It's more consistency. Like in behaviors, do I consistently show that I am making an effort, or that I want to meet what you feel is trust,
right,
or trustworthy?
And the problem with this, though, is what you're talking about is, okay, I can do that for a long time. I can show you that I'm trustworthy. But kind of like your first ex, if I'm not willing to take that plunge and make myself vulnerable to you, the trust is never all you've done is show that you're trustworthy. Trustworthy requires the other party to then make themselves vulnerable. There's no way to earn trust. You can't earn trust. You can show you're trustworthy is the best you can do.
Yeah.
So what, in that circumstance, what were you saying, like, were some of the things you had to do?
So it was, there were things that, it was my second ex at the time. That was the relationship I was in. With everything that had happened, I was trying to show her that I could be a good husband, and then I can show trust. I can rebuild it or whatever. And so what it was is she was wanting certain things because, well, how do I know where you are or when you are? You can call me from your phone and maybe you're somewhere else or something like that. And so I took it a step further, and so to answer that question, I just did whatever it took so that she knew where I was. So when I went to work, I called her not from my phone, but from the work phone so she can track that phone number. When I left work, I called her from the work number saying I'm leaving. And then as soon as I got home, again, I'm not using my phone. I was staying with my grandparents at the time. I called her from my grandparents' house so she could see the numbers of where I was at. She literally knew where I was at. Now,
but you had 2 jobs at the time, though. So you're doing that from both locations.
Yeah, so I was calling her so she could track where I was, so she knew where I was. And I was happy and willing to do that. And so what was funny is the feedback, what you're talking about in the therapy session, that all the guys in there were like, well, that ain't going to last. How long? How do I expect to do that? I can't believe that. Oh, no woman deserves. No, they were just totally, and because
I wouldn't put up with that for 1 month.
Yeah. Okay. And I was like, no, but I want to. I wanted to.
Okay, Jerry.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So that was the funny response I got from that, because it was something I was willing to do and wanted to do, and it was even pushing for it. Like, oh, what else do you want? And because that was something of value to me, but their response was like, no, I can't believe that. But then it was just me. Then that's what we got to in that session. It's like, well, hold on a minute, guys. Like, don't you understand what I'm trying to go for? And if it's a goal and something important for me, then there's no doubt or question. I didn't at 1 second ever think what the feedback was that I was getting from all the guys. I didn't at one time ever think that. You know what I mean? And I continued to do it for as long as she wanted me to do it. And I was happy to do it.
It's fascinating how sometimes, like, the opposite of that, which is, so in other words, what these dudes were saying, oh yeah, this is what I want. Like, so you want no end in sight. Like, you don't want a blueprint laid out of, oh, here's the things that I need to see, which is actually really intuitive on her end. that she would say, here are the things I need to see from you in order to show that you're trustworthy, right? And instead, like, how many times have guys been in that position? I mean, and people listening to this where you're like, God, what do I got to do? What do I got to do to show you? Well, wouldn't it be nice to say, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this, and you got to do it for this long, and then I'll decide whether or not I trust you.
It's a task list.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I know that sounds contrived, of course.
Well, that's not how I meant it.
Yeah, it does. But it says, okay, if I need these things and I need to see it for this long, and then at that point, I'm going to choose to trust you or not. If things were laid out that way, I mean, think about this, because how many times, because at that point, I think for couples, it's a shift. How often have you been in a relationship? I mean, everybody sitting in this room where your girl's brought up something from 2 years ago and thrown it in your face. I'm like, okay, well, hold on now. Like, eventually the statute of limitations got to run out on those behaviors. Okay. So I think it marks a moment, and you have to, I mean, I know these are arbitrary moments, but you have to make a decision to say, I trust you. And when I trust you, it shifts. I can't throw stuff in your face anymore or use this as a reason why I'm now mad at you or anything like that. I get it. People are hurt, and trust doesn't happen on our timetable, but I think it needs to be equitable and fair when you're saying, here's what I need. I need to see this.
Did you get in trouble this weekend?
No, no. I've had plenty of thoughts.
What about when you did this?
Yeah. No. I've just had plenty of conversations, most notably with Chris, about some of these things because, because I think that was. I was really appreciative of the fact that he would do some of those things. And of course, everybody's like, thinking he's bitching out or whatever you want to call it. I was like, no. That's a great gift grateful. That she gave to him. Oh, and whether or not it works out, who knows? But I mean, I think everybody in this room would benefit from something like that. Imagine if your probation officer said, I need to see these things for this long, and if you do this, then I'm going to say you're good to go. And then where sometimes it's a mystery, like, okay, what do I got to do? What do I got to do to prove myself? How many times dudes are asking that? Yeah. And I think that's a great way of looking at it. Yeah.
We try to make that as clear cut as we can, but there's a lot of vagueness that goes into, well, probably from a client's perspective, all the stuff that goes into what we would determine to be a successful completion. I don't know if it's a good time for a gear shift here, but these like client specific, villain to victory podcasts. I think that listeners,
villain. I don't like that.
Oh, it's because you're victorious.
Yeah, because you're victorious.
Dude, that's interesting. You actually mentioned that. Yeah.
But you guys came up with some loser names for that. I like the villains to victory. See, it's provocative. People are like, ooh, I'll listen to that. Yeah,
real quick though, I do want to add with that last thing we were talking about, because maybe people are wondering, like, well, that's your ex then, so did what you were doing work? Well, it worked for that, but that's not the reason why we inevitably ended up divorcing. I just wanted to throw that in there, that what I was doing did work, and she allowed that to work, but that's not inevitably the end of the day why. Just want to throw that in there.
Before what were you going to ask?
I was going to ask for him to tell us about his offense.
That's what I was going to ask next, because I think people are listening to this and they're like, what did this dude do? Yeah.
That's all they're thinking about. Like,
fast
forward to that part.
Yeah. Usually it starts that way, but I like how it's gone so far. This has been good.
We'll timestamp this part right here.
In
post,
what you feel comfortable sharing. Don't feel like you have to throw out anything you don't want to.
I don't know. I was charged with lewdness involving a minor.
Yeah.
To the degree that you're comfortable.
Because I think most people hear that and say, okay, so what does that mean? What is that? And like I said, you don't have to share.
So I basically I'll say the details of kind of what happened with it.
That'd be good.
Yeah, just like keep names,
I was at home
maybe.
I was at home and someone said they walked in front of my house and I was naked in the doorway masturbating, and they were with their child. So they were walking past my house. Is what basically happened in a nutshell. So their child saw that and they called the police, and then off to the races we go. Basically, yeah.
Okay. And so the lewdness, I mean, if you look up the statute, obviously a lot of things fall under that, but that certainly would qualify there.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to bring it up, because I think most people, especially if they're either getting into the field or just someone listening, when they hear like sex offender or sex offense, there's pretty narrow templated ideas that they have of what that is. I think most people are pretty surprised to realize there's a lot more that falls under that umbrella than they realize as someone gets talking about it. And I think where you can shed some light on that is just, okay, that's why it involved, quote unquote, having a minor there, has certain restrictions while I'm on probation or being back with my family.
Yeah. Well, the minor part too, and this is also discussed in my psychosexual evaluation too. And I'm not minimizing at all when I say things like this. I'm not trying to make light of it or whatever, but really it was geared toward the woman walking by. But at the same time, you can argue, well, isn't that worse than that you chose to ignore that there was a child there? Does that make sense? What I'm saying? Because he put that in my psychosexual evaluation too. That the intentions were toward the woman, not the child.
Can you describe your intentions?
Just arousal. Maybe it sounds so funny saying it. This woman would like what she saw, and something would come of it. But I don't even know if my brain was going that far ahead. But
well, look, man. Like,
it sounds funny saying it to me.
Anything sounds funny. I think at hindsight, all of the stuff we do, we talk about it after it sounds funny. Sure,
but I guess that's what I was thinking.
It's helpful to understand because I think people get curious because they don't know like actually kind of what's behind the mindset. And so, the idea is that, she's going to see me, she's going to like what she sees, and maybe something will come from it. Like whether or not that was verbatim your thoughts. So what was going on in your life at the time that you felt that was a viable option? That made sense to you at that time?
I think, I don't know. I don't want to, I guess, cliche jump to what everyone talks about, but it was probably just viewing a lot of pornography. And then also, I think I wasn't being as open as I should have been with my wife about what I felt that I wanted sexually. But there's another layer to that. Kind of the religion thing. That was something we were going to talk about. We haven't yet, but kind of not being honest with my wife, I felt was the religion thing. I was using it as an excuse that I couldn't be. And so it's like I was looking for an outlet in pornography, and then also the pornography was snowballing to the mindset, I guess.
I don't know if I'm off base here in trying to kind of deduce what you're saying. What I'm guessing you're meaning by the religion is, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But are you saying that you felt maybe there was a little bit of sexual repression within the house, or that maybe you weren't getting your sexual needs met to the degree that you wanted, and so that's where pornography and other risky sexual behaviors come into play?
Well, yes, like the sexual needs weren't being met, but I wouldn't dare ask them anyway, and kind of because of, and that's the thing, is I should have, and it probably would have been okay, but also I didn't want there to be like this. I felt like if I was going to, I would have been planting some kind of idea in her mind about, where did you get that idea? Where would you want that? And don't get me wrong, it's not like I'm some weird sexual guy in the bedroom. That's not what I'm trying to say either. But within the religion, I felt that, and I even still kind of do, although honestly, part of me still thinks that, but at the same time, if I would have been more honest, it obviously would have played out differently, I think.
Are you saying you're concerned, so that would have made her hip to the idea that where were you getting this information about sex?
Exactly.
And so she may have
or that's wrong to want that or to be that way.
Right.
Because that would be maybe sinful, even though it was husband and wife thing. And she probably actually wouldn't have thought any of that.
Yeah.
Because it's not like I was wanting some weird thing, let's go down to a leather wearing thing. No, it's not that at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yet still, it's like.
Well, you're just worried about how that's going to look as far as does it look like I'm a bad person? Does it look like I'm a weirdo if I want this? And not only do I want to not fill that with my own religion, I don't want to experience that possible shame or judgment from someone who's really close to me too.
Well, exactly. Even though it was my wife, I couldn't trust myself to be honest enough with her about it.
I appreciate what you said a minute ago, in that you're not blaming her necessarily for the problems in your sex life. Like you're blaming yourself for not communicating what it is that you wanted.
Yeah. And
I
think the worst case scenario would have been if I communicated it and then, I get rid of my ego and then she tells me that, well, I'm not comfortable with that or whatever, or I didn't know you were thinking that, or maybe she's shocked. Then the worst case would be like, well, let's I don't think that would happen either.
Are there some signs?
Go to a therapist, I was going to say, but I don't think that would happen either because it's just ego things in my head.
Mm-hmm. So in talking about trust and trustworthiness, were there some, I mean, again, you don't have to necessarily be specific, but were you doubting that you guys had a strong enough relationship or that she would be sensitive with the information accordingly that you could even say such things? Did you think that you could be vulnerable with her?
I think that's what it was, is no, I didn't think I can say the things because it's like what he was saying earlier. I think I was too afraid or ashamed or something like that I would have looked silly or been wrong or been a sinner or something like that, or where did you even get that information from? That it's like,
and this isn't necessarily bagging on any particular religion. This is your assumption of where it would have gone, right? Because I know we wanted to talk about the religious piece, and I just think this is kind of a crucial time because, like, even with the pornography, a lot of people kind of demonize pornography and say that this is the cause, and I kind of argue a little bit about this. It's more of a symptom. I mean, the pornography use is, regardless of whatever you're doing, it was kind of safe because there was no judgments. I mean, that's anonymous. You can use that without, nobody's judging you or anything like that. And these are things that obviously are these are. The real problem with pornography is it reinforces a false sense of what's really going on.
Which is what was going on too, because the pornography was adding to maybe I want this or that, and if I mention it, then where did you hear that from?
Setting up
whatever. And
I think maybe where Mace was going with this, like also this weird dynamic we get caught up in. So maybe just referencing specifically to porn. How that will represent all these situations that are just really not how things usually work out. Like how you said, I was just thinking if I did this in front of her, maybe she'd like it. Because that stuff happens all the time in porn. Like the UPS guy shows up, hey, here's your Amazon package. Oh, well, just come in and let's go sit on the couch. Like,
it's more like...
It's kind of a normal thing in porn.
More like, hey, ma'am, I'm the plumber. I'm here to fix your dishwasher. And she's like, did you bring your snake? I don't know why she sounds like a southern dude.
Then on top of that,
each their own.
And I think it's one of those things, like, not to knock religion or anything at all, but just to say, like, being a human growing up, you start to find out things usually on your own or through friends, and then there's definitely not so subtle message sometimes with this from religion that says if you're doing this, it's bad or it's shameful. You shouldn't be doing that. So it's like, but I am doing that, and I am feeling that, so I must be bad. And then we have this weird idea of, well, we're not supposed to talk about sex, we're not supposed to do that, but it's in everything used to market stuff towards you, and it's in TV, and it's on our computers, on our phones, but then it's also bad, don't talk about it. So then you think of, I want to have an outlet, I want to have something, so I'm going to do this, and it kind of feeds this weird cycle of you're not allowed to talk about it, everyone does this, but don't say anything, and if you do, you're bad. And then you just throw in all these different angles, like a marriage and then religious beliefs. And that's, how do we get through that? I don't know. That's a weird thing. And I think it ends up being very shame-based, though. Like, you more feel like something's wrong with you when really you're probably thinking pretty normal stuff. You're probably feeling pretty normal stuff.
Yeah, I in hindsight, really, if I just would have come forward about what I wanted, she probably would have been down.
Yeah, but think of that, though. I mean, like, so my religious beliefs and someone I'm married to, that's two pretty big entities that have like a pretty big role in how I feel about myself and my life. So on the flip side, hindsight being 2020, we know, I should have talked about that in the moment, though. Yeah, that's a pretty hard conversation to have, just because of the fear of disconnect.
And I didn't know how to ever even bring that up or anything either.
Do you know now? Because that's a portion of keeping this from happening again.
It's being just honest. It's being honest about things. So I've been in a couple of relationships since I've been divorced and things like that, and they've played out a lot better. Just because I've just been upfront about things and honest about things. And I'm not talking about sex stuff, but just anything and everything in general. It's trying to just so you know what I mentioned.
Honest
I don't want to change gears too much here,
Yeah.
but because change was another thing that I really wanted to talk about here. Bringing some of that forward and stuff like that. It really, it's just been better, easier. I just feel better.
Well, it's good. It's good. I think that you mentioned something earlier that was kind of glossed over. Was like when you mentioned that saying like what you did and the motivations behind it. It's kind of weird hearing yourself say it.
Oh yeah, because I don't say it. I don't say it to people. And
well,
the last time I ever talked about it was in therapy 2.5 years ago.
Well, and to look back on it, I think all of us can look back on things that we used to do and think how preposterous our behaviors were at the time.
Oh yeah.
And what we were thinking. And I mean, so that behavior where I'm masturbating to a degree that a person sees this and maybe that's going to spark a desire or something like that doesn't necessarily fall into like what they call exhibitionism or anything like that. It's obviously kind of toying with that a little bit. Definitely kind of like a paraphilia. And so for anybody's listening to this, like paraphilia is just sort of like, I don't know, experiencing arousal to fantasies, behaviors, objects that are outside of what we would call like mainstream sexual interests is what people would say. And but a lot of times, a lot of people think this is linked with emotional disorders, and I think very much so. So any time that we're emotionally connected to a given, I don't know, subject or thought or something like that, it's going to distort, the rational thought process behind to what degree it distorts the rational thought process is up to how much emotionally connected we are to those things. Like I would say anybody, you have kids, Chris, I have kids, anytime if it were coming to like one of my kids are in danger, I would lose my mind, lose my mind if it meant to protect them. I would too. So, and because I'm extremely emotionally connected to them. Yeah. And so anytime we're emotionally connected to something, it's going to distort our thoughts. And so it's good to hear you say, I can't even believe I thought that, but you did think it at the time because there was an emotional connection to these behaviors that were being reinforced by the pornography and certainly weren't being expressed in a healthy way within your relationship. Yeah. And I mean, and that's a lot of where this comes from. So pornography is not necessarily the cause so much as like this was
it's very much a contributing factor.
For sure. I mean, I just, and I'm not like a purveyor of porn or anything like that. I mean, it just is when we're talking about things, it's good to be precise about what these things are. And I mean, I think that's
rather than scapegoat its symptom.
Yeah. Well, this is all because of porn. Well,
thanks, Ted Bundy.
Yeah. Thanks, Ted. But I mean, like it's, and I think your when you talk about kind of this religious thing, there's another conflict going on there with you because it wasn't. Because one thing is that because at the time you're LDS, correct?
Yeah. Not supposed to say that anymore.
I was just going to say that.
You can't say that anymore.
What are you supposed to say now?
Aren't you supposed to say Latter-day Saint or?
So this was just within a few days of today is, the church came out and you don't say Mormon anymore, LDS. They want to be known as the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or the Church of Jesus Christ.
Rolls right off the tongue.
That is just too much to say.
I know. I think they're just wanting to get rid of Mormon and the idea that like people just think Mormon.
I went to BYU. I love my Mormon homies. They're awesome. Like, and there's the thing is you had a profound respect for the religion. It had nothing to do with like you were bagging on it.
I still do.
Right. When we talked about this, part of the emotional conflict there was you, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you just had a really, and I learned a lot from you about this actually, but you had an utmost respect for faith and you had an utmost respect for the value system attached to that. The conflict is you couldn't bring yourself to fully believe in some of these things. And so you were dealing with some big time problems because it's like, well, this is an element of this that I just don't agree with. And I truly value this as a way of living and everybody else, but who am I going to tell about that? Like, who am I going to say? Am I just going to go to my wife and say, I don't want to do this anymore?
Well, and that's to answer that question, if anyone's still thinking it, well, why did you get divorced then? and that's what it came down to. I mean, we worked things out for a long time, but eventually, kind of the story with that is I'd never been good at that religion, but I was married twice, formerly known as LDS. I'm just going to call it that.
Yeah,
it's the quick
I don't want to say all that.
Which is it's the quick go-to. So anyway, I was married twice, and just as I think as I was going through the therapy, because it has to do with change also, is I'm kind of questioning everything. I'm questioning everything about who I am and what I'm all about. And that was one thing that has always kind of been on my mind. I understand the thinking of the religion and this goes through all religion, because again, I want to emphasize what you said. I'm not bashing it in any way. I still take my kids every other weekend when I have them to LDS church. I still do it, but I'm just not invested in it anymore. But anyway, my process of going through that was I've never been good at it. It's just parts of it is just I don't believe it. That's fundamentally what it is. Not that there's anything wrong with it. If that's something that is you and part of your life, whether it's this religion or others, do it and do it well. But if it's something that you just feel like you're having to do, I felt like it's something that I should do. I felt like it dictated a lot of the decisions that I made in my life. Now, I don't regret anything because I am where I'm at today. So I don't want to sit and talk about hindsight or anything like that. But I just felt like that was something that I was more struggling with. Like it was something that was not helping me, even though at the time I was trying to embrace it harder than I had ever had in my life ever. But I just wasn't going anywhere with it. And so several sessions with Mace, and I was bawling my eyes out here. With Mace in the therapy sessions, I don't know what to do.
I wasn't crying.
No, I was.
I've never shed a tear in my life.
But I was really struggling with the idea of leaving it because all of my life.
Well, that's what you're supposed to be doing.
30 years of my life was this religion, and what are my family going to say? What is my wife going to say? You know, because already I've caused them so much heartache and pain with all the other choices I've made. And so now I'm going to throw this on them, which is potentially as big, if not bigger, saying, you know what, this isn't me anymore. And so it wasn't like I just I'm not going to be Mormon anymore. I'm done. And it's like, see ya.
Yeah, but
it was a process.
It was but the thing was, man, you said something that like made me think so much about this, about faith in general. Because like I said, again, please nobody like be silly about this and act like anybody's bashing on the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Everybody loves them. Here's the thing. And what you were saying was you felt like you were doing more harm by being dishonest about saying, I'm in the faith, when I truly don't believe in it. And I'm just going through the motions to appease my family and my loved ones.
Yeah, that's what was happening.
And if faith is a real thing, and I really truly believe, I'm shitting all over it every time that I go to church, and every time I was like two different people, and I inwardly don't believe this. I'm disrespecting this thing that I have the utmost respect for. I think like your decision to exit that is more respectful than anything. I think, how many times have we known dudes that have gone on missions, had no intention of, and at the time we're not practicing any of the value system associated with the LDS religion, but doing this as a political move, going on a mission, and you know their girlfriends at the time are pregnant and all kinds of other stuff. I mean, it happens. And that's not a knock on again the religion. That's a knock on individuals not being true to their own faith and being honest with themselves about what this is. And I think you took it a step further and said, I'm being really disrespectful to something that I have, you know, a lot of love for in my life.
Because I've always kind of been that way with it down below. It's like I do the religion thing when that comes up, but then it's like I'm hanging around work people and I feel like I just be more who I am and myself. And I think as I was going through these changes, I just wanted to get rid of all that and I just want to be myself. more often. I just wanted to feel better about who I am. Right. And that required me to just, I think, come forward about that.
Well, there's obviously many aspects to that, but I think that's a part of where I try to look at it too, going within like therapies. Mm-hmm. Think of the constant view of your own self-image there and your own self-worth as, I know I'm supposed to be this way and everybody else wants me to be this way, so I'm just going to do that even though I know I don't believe it. Because like Mace was saying, there's a part of me that's kind of crapping on the process and religion itself by doing that. But then also, how do I feel about myself if I'm constantly having to tell lies to people and make them think that I'm doing? I don't think that feels good in terms of your self-esteem either.
Yeah, and I just again, I just want to emphasize also that I hope us saying this isn't offending anyone or making someone feel
it will
like
be.
It's really not my intention. That's not where I'm going with it or whatever. Because the same thing. I still take my kids. I still take my kids to it, and that is the lesson that I'm going to continue to teach my daughter. I'm not anti-Mormon at all. Mm-hmm. All of my family is still very Mormon.
Well, it doesn't even have to be about Mormonism. I think that's just religion in general. If you really believe that and you're okay with following through on that, go for it. But I think if that aspect of, if I'm only believing things, whether it's religion or whatever it is, if I'm only believing things because I'm afraid of the disconnect from people around me, if I were to voice concerns that I'm having, I think over time that takes more of a toll on things.
Yeah, I still very much plan on telling my daughter that same thing. I'm not going to be like, hey, it's not real. No, I'm going to tell her, do it well, Be your true self.
If you believe it, good for you. Follow through on it.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think the important aspect of this is what you're saying is, for me, I started to not believe in enough of this that made me question, is this for me? And you had to be true to you eventually, because you were saying before I might have been just trying to jump the hoops and appease and put on this mask and make everybody else happy, which became at the cost of myself and knowing who I am and what I want to do.
And again, I know what people from the religion would be thinking about what I'm saying. Trust me, I know, because I was LDS for 33 years. So I get it. I understand it. He's confused, the devil, or whatever. But really, I get that. I know, and I'm not bashing it or in any way, shape, or form.
Well, for some people, wasn't this?
Believe it's belief systems. Every religion has their different belief systems. People have their different belief systems, and really, who are you, and what's best for you? And
you're not saying it's wrong. You're just saying it's not my
wrong
thing
at all.
Yeah.
Well, and to Chris's credit on this, sometimes I spent our buddy, for some reason, had somebody from like BYU Hawaii called me, and they were talking to me for like our friend Aaron had them call me, and I talked to this girl for probably 2.5 hours, and she thought it was a great conversation. I just talked to her about this, and she was trying to talk to me about attending church and whatnot, and I wasn't trying to talk her out of it. I was actually telling her why, because I have a respect for it, I'd feel bad about going there and not believing the same things, because I have a respect for faith. And one of the things she had said was, well, that's okay. Part of this is going and learning, and eventually faith just develops organically. And I was like, okay, I think that's a credible argument. I think that's probably true, because this is one of those things where I just need to see something. I need some sort of divine intervention. And she's like, well, unless you truly believe in faith, then that's never going to happen, because there's things like that are happening all the time, and you label it as coincidence or just luck or something like that. Mm-hmm. And she's saying, so if you believe in that, that's where you kind of get to that process. And I said, yeah, maybe. And so, but you tried that. You were dedicated. You were like, I'm going to commit myself for, I think you stayed in therapy for almost an additional year working through this issue, because you were really trying to say, I'm going to commit myself fully to it. And you struggled with it. And I think you gave it as much as you could, to the degree where you said, I'm being dishonest to that, and I'm being dishonest to anything. So, because that's where people knock on religion and stuff like that. It drives me nuts, because if you're dedicated to it and you follow the value system. I mean, there's not a value, I don't know, except for like what, devil worshiping. Even they probably have some good stuff, right? But I mean, there's not
to that devil worship.
Yeah. So if you're just living the value system that's associated with that religion, and you're a good person and you're nice to people, and you go to church, dude, mind your own business. Everybody else, like, who cares? It's not a knock on that. I think that your decision to do this was not, F those movements. It had nothing to do with that so much as I really have an appreciation for that, and I don't want to disrespect it.
Well, sure. And I just want to add one thing that that you had said to me during a session, in fact, was as I was kind of struggling with my thoughts and where I wanted to go, was you asked me, which totally speaks for religion, is you asked me, it's like, what, that very question, well, what are your morals and values? And then it made me go, oh, all of my morals and values, or spirituality, if you will, because I know that's always a group topic, what does spirituality mean to you? What is that to you? And that really got me thinking, oh, yes, okay, so this has been such a big part of my life. If I'm getting rid of that, am I getting rid of those things? The obvious answer is no. I'm not going to go, thou shalt not kill. Well, that's gone. I'm going to go kill. Obviously I have morals and values still. So that to me was going, okay, if I'm going to get away from this, who am I as a person? And those are the things that I brought forward to, because kind of, sorry if I branch off a little bit here, but as I eventually went to my wife at the time, and I, as gracefully as I could, I am not going to do this anymore, even though we're married Mormon, LDS. I went to her with that, but because the things I learned in the therapy there was I'm still a good husband. I'm still going to be a good father. I'm still going to be a good person. And I'll even go with you still. It's just, I don't believe it. It's not me, but at the end of the day, she thought about it for 6 months or so, but just kind of wanted to go a different direction. And that's kind of why we ended up divorcing. But, that question though, what you asked me there, is I think very important, because spirituality, morals and values and things, if you're religious or not, or believe this religion or that religion or whatever, I think they're important. They're important to, I guess, being a human, a person.
Like every religion is just some type of epistemology, some type of way of knowing, and each religion kind of has their own explanation of origins, how this all came to be. And also with religion, it's not just origins, it's origins complete with values and how to live life. And so when you were talking about, falling away from, your faith, and see, I guess that's the thing that religion relies upon, is that it's based on faith. And when you start to doubt that faith and maybe start to pull away from the religion, then it's like, well, does that mean that these morals and values go out the door along with it? And you answered correctly, no, it doesn't. But it does make you question, well, where does morality come from again? And if religion is one explanation for the way of knowing about where we all came from and what we're supposed to be here and what happens when we die, and maybe, science might explain away some things that maybe once upon a time we thought to be true. And then, some smart people with eggheads figured out that actually it's this, and we can prove it because of this. It's like doubt starts to creep in, and that's terrifying for people, because then it's like, well, what am I doing here? And what's the purpose that I'm here? And like atheism doesn't have an answer for, as far as like a guideline on how to live life. Atheism is just the absence of belief. It doesn't give you an architecture of, well, what do I do? And, a lot of that has to come from kind of like your own sets of values and your way of understanding the world and what morality is. Atheists can obviously believe in thou shalt not kill also. But again, when like the origins have explained to you about how we all came to be, and that maybe that started, I don't know specifically what it was that caused you to check your faith. But I think that what happened is you lost a piece of yourself, you lost a piece of your identity. Religion is such a big thing. And especially if it's like, it's the framework upon which you've built a lot of your life decisions up into including your marriage and the way that family goes, and then your plans for the afterlife and all these different things. And then all of a sudden things stop making sense, and, maybe the Big Bang did happen, and, or whatever. I think fear sets in.
It's like an adult version of when you find out that Santa Claus isn't real.
Dude, it really is. Remember how crushing that was?
That was actually traumatizing. I walked downstairs, my mom and dad are like putting Ninja Turtles and shit out under the tree. I'm like, what?
Yeah. It actually didn't bother me. I remember when I found out, I was like, well, as long as I'm still getting presents, I don't care.
Actually, I felt smart. I was so proud of myself. I was so proud. I was like, I was the smartest kid on earth. My grandma, but she kept trying to convince me for years after, and I'd play along,
Oh, I didn't, dude. It was hard on me. I don't like it. I mean, that's not very respectful of what that is. But I think I can see what you're saying is this has been something you've dedicated a big chunk of your life to, and to organically just start to question that. I really appreciate your honesty with regards to that. Mm-hmm. Again, I would say there's plenty of people right now who are saying, this is who I am and this is the religion that I practice, and have nothing to do with that religion, the values behaviorally. Mm-hmm. They're 100% in the opposite direction, which is really unfortunate. And I think your honesty is above and beyond with regards to those things. And that's where it boiled down to, is like, if I'm being honest, if I'm being really insightful about these things, this is just something that, it'd be a big, I don't know if it's like a self-betrayal or something like that. You said you lost a piece of yourself. That's a good way of looking at it, because it's like, man, and clearly you still maintained your morality and how exercise that. And by all accounts, you're a good dude.
Well, because at the same time, though, it was all about, and maybe that's a good transition into this other thing I wanted to talk about is it's change. It was change. So at the same time, it was because I was, who am I and what am I all about? And so, that was definitely a big part of, because, and I'll just go there.
Yeah.
The biggest thing I got out of therapy, the biggest thing I got out of all of this was getting rid of kind of who I am as a person, and getting rid of my ego and what I think I know about myself and who I am and what everything is all about, and getting rid of a lot of that. And then that allowed me to then take in new things. It's that we've heard it 1,000 times. How could you fill a cup that's already full? Mm-hmm. I think that big time, and even now, plays a big part in my life, thinking that way. So what I was going is getting rid of garbage. Everyone has garbage in there, but trying to figure out what the garbage was through therapy. But also getting rid of things that weren't necessarily working for me. And I'm just going to word it that way, broadly here. But getting rid of things that weren't working for me, so I can go, what is going to work? What do I want in there? Mm-hmm. And then I can say that this is me as a person. And with that, because I talk about, God, I was talking to someone just today, because a server that I work with, she was talking about a therapy thing. She's doing, oh, therapy, huh? I love therapy. And we start talking about it, and then, but that's what I was sharing with her too, because it's still part of my life, is trying to empty those things, fill new things. Because I just feel like, because we're talking about vulnerability and stuff like that, are things you guys are saying, I just feel like you'll never progress as much as you want unless you dare yourself to change, to get rid of a lot of those things in your life, those hard things.
Say that again.
And replace them with better things.
Say that again. dare yourself to change?
Well, yeah. So
You'll never progress as much as you want unless you dare yourself to change.
Well, because really what it comes down to is and there's a couple ways to think about this in easier terms. Say so, like what is your favorite sports football team? You like football?
Yeah, I like.
So what's your favorite team?
I like the Dallas Cowboys.
Dallas Cowboys. So if I was to tell you that you don't like the Dallas Cowboys anymore, now you're a 49ers fan. No, wait, the Cowboys hate the
Eagles.
Everybody.
Say the Eagles.
Yeah, okay, Eagles. Okay,
Yeah.
you hit
So
it
you're an
straight.
Eagles. You're an Eagles fan now. So it's me saying that to you, I imagine in your head you're going, no way, never,
Yeah,
or different things like that. You're going, no,
Preposterous.
You don't have it. It's
Yeah.
preposterous. You don't have to, but to truly change and believe that. So there's two ways you want to look at that, which I'm sure a lot of guys in therapy are going. They're going to go, oh, you're just going to brainwash me. It's brainwashing because they're afraid because they don't know. There's fear and there's anxiety of do I want to get rid of these things? You have that life path that you went on that led you to these points, and now I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to be an Eagles fan now. Well, imagine that. Imagine if you really are. At the end of the day, does that really help or hurt things or anything like that? But that's easy because we're not talking about ourselves. Because another one is food. So this one's a little bit more tricky, but you can actually. I think do this one a little easier.
And Chris is a chef, just so you know.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So take whatever, and I actually went through this process through culinary school too, so I kind of did this on my own anyway, but this is before any of this line of thinking. So another thing is take whatever food you don't like, and you're going to sit down and you're going to eat that. You're going to eat it, even though you hate it, okay? But what you got to do, and it's going to take some maybe focus or practice or whatever, is you got to erase your opinion about that food entirely. You don't love it either. I'm not saying you got to love it, but you don't hate it. It's neutral.
Okay.
All you got to do is realize that other people all over the world, lots of people eat this and they like it for a specific reason. So with me, it's like bananas. I've never liked bananas.
Caca.
Yeah, but I eat a banana almost every day because just the health benefits of them. I'll put them in oatmeal or whatever. I eat them all the time. But going there, I just go, it's a banana. Okay, I'm tasting it. This is what it tastes like. It's no like or hate. This is what it tastes like, and this is what it is.
You're describing the flavor without assigning a value to it.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So these same kind of thought processes can also go into yourself, I believe, because you can go. Sorry if I'm not using the correct word here. The offenders that are maybe listening to this, can you dare yourself then to go? Because you got to think, your life path led you to where you are now, which is, you got caught or whatever the reason is, you're listening to this or you're in therapy or whatever. So there's something there. So you got to go, there's a lot of stuff that led you to that point. So can you get rid of those things then and go, I'm going to get rid of all the things and it's going to be okay. It's okay. Even though it's scary to think, I'm a Eagles fan now, but can you do that within yourself? Can you go, I can act this way, I can be this way, I can think this way, and it's okay. I with the religion thing, because this is where this applies, I was so afraid of what my family are going to think, but at the end of the day, that didn't matter what they think, it's what I think and what's going to be best for me as a person. So I can grow and learn and go, and I'm not saying that was, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying the religion was garbage that I got rid of, but I go, I need to change, and this is what it's going to be, and I need to tell myself that it's okay if I do this, and the repercussions from the people around me is not going to make it a negative thing, or the change that it needs to take place. It's not going to be a harmful or hurtful or scary thing. It's going to be scary, but change in general to me, it's like. And I'm always there. I always try to look at, no ultimatums on anything. And I always try to have that idea of that glass, always a little bit empty. It's never really ever full, because I think, because what I don't want to get is into that same mentality of that I had before my offense, is that I know who I am and I'm sure who I am. And you get all these like hardcore thoughts about who you are as a person, and you're so sure, or you're never going to get caught, or all these different things. I don't want to get my ego going so much and my cup's so full and I'm so sure of myself and whatever, and I'm so smart when really I'm not. It's okay to be the same as everyone else. It's okay to be normal. So try it and start practicing that, and so that then you can progress and learn the new things that from therapy or religion or whatever it is, so you can start incorporating those things into your life to be a better you, because that's why we're here, or we're in therapy, or that's why we're just here in this world, in this life, to become a better person, right? So here we have a circumstance where therapy, people work out their bodies all the time, but they don't work out their minds. So think of it that way. Learn things then that you can become a better you, so you can change in that way. But you got to get rid of stuff, in my opinion, first.
You know what? When you finished therapy with Mate, did we decide 2 years ago you finished with him?
About 2.5, yeah.
2.5 years ago. You clearly didn't see that as a finish line. You've been obviously developing yourself and your mindset.
Well, no, there's
approach.
so many more things out there. YouTube is such a good tool for those who can be on the internet. It's such a good tool. There's so many things on YouTube that you can look up about any topic that you want to, just building better relationships. Sit down with your girlfriend or wife, or if that's something you guys are having a hard time with. And there's so many different YouTube videos on how to have a better relationship, how to be more emotionally stable types of things. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. There's
so many things to learn from. And so, like, for example, the opposite end of that is, we go, well, if you're not religious anymore, like the AA programs, there's a higher power, different things like that. So here I'm more talking about empowering yourself. And so it's just, again, you're learning the tools, you're learning things. Humble yourself enough to go, I don't know how to be the best person I am, because the person that I am got me to this point where I got an offense charge.
Well, and people don't.
So,
I think that's yeah.
So now can I change who I am as a person without being scared that even my family or whatever can be like, they brainwashed you there in therapy. It's like, no, that's not what it's about at all.
And that is, I think that's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of clients, because we're not, and I truly believe that, I'm not asking you to change because you're a bad person or that you're screwed up or that you're the devil or anything like that. I think a simple recognition of, and I try to tell clients this all the time, look, your offense made perfect sense to you when you did it, okay? And you didn't go crazy. You weren't insane. It made perfect sense to you. And the constellation of events and thoughts and emotions and development and everything that went into that moment when you did that is inexplicable. I mean, we don't know. It's hard to like pinpoint. And even if it was in the past that something happened, well, what are we going to do? We don't have a time machine. What we can admit to ourselves is, I'm on a trajectory that got me there. Can I shift that trajectory? And that requires me to make some fundamental changes in the way I view the world, the way I act, and how I think about things. And that's really all therapy is about. It's just the willingness to say, look, the way that things are going, that's where it ended up there. And everybody is capable of everything all the time. And what trajectory you're on is probably not likely, like, I'm probably not going to start using heroin soon, right? No, I'm just saying I'm on a trajectory that's really unlikely. But am I immune to ever becoming addicted to an opiate? No, I'm not. Nobody's immune to those things. And if I say I'm immune, then I'm complacent to notice the behaviors that would be leading me down that path. So admitting to myself that, yep, I'm capable of making really horrible decisions because everybody else before me has made really horrible decisions. Okay, and I've made some bad decisions in my life. But am I willing to just say, okay, can I make those changes and admit to myself that maybe I don't have it all figured out, and be willing to kind of accept some of the things we know to promote that change? That's that's just good that you've got there to that point and you're willing to continue to grow from it.
Yeah, well, and I just think that it's important to always think that way.
Well, I think it's big as far as we tie this into treatment, but I think that's just being human, like being okay with the idea that I can be wrong about things and that I might be wrong about things. It's like how we grow. I mean, have you learned anything from you didn't know it at one point? So I think it's just that idea of we tend to be going towards this weird polarization where it's very anxiety based. Like, say, for example, I think of religion. Like, okay, if someone believes something just out of the fact that they know that they're supposed to, and then if I don't believe it, mom and dad think that's bad, and my family thinks that's bad. But I also think sometimes people can go outside of that and question it and come back to it, kind of saying, yeah, I actually questioned it. I went out and I thought maybe this isn't right. And then maybe they had their beliefs confirmed. Like, no, the fact that I went out and actually questioned it made me come back and realize, no, I do believe this. And then for them, awesome, because I think that builds even more faith or foundation on what they believe, because they actually were willing to question it. Where I think whether it's religion or anything, we tend to hesitate taking that route just because of the pure anxiety that would kick in there. Like, if I start to question this, then for one, everything I've based my life on is going to be wrong. I'm going to get rejected by my family, or people are going to be really disappointed in me. So sometimes it's just easier to do the status quo in the moment. Maybe not the long term, but I think we can do that with anything. Someone says something politically that I don't agree with, and there's probably a little bit of that fear that kicks in. Well, what if I am wrong? And I don't want to look like I'm wrong, so I'm going to dig in.
With everything that I've said, the religion thing in general, because just the same, I might be completely wrong with all that, and I'm okay with that because I am where I am now, and I feel good about who I am.
Yeah,
and I feel like I can be myself, and that isn't that what everyone wants. You shouldn't be afraid to live in your own mind, by any means. So yeah, but
that's a good place to wrap this up, don't you think?
Yeah, I appreciate having you on, man.
Oh yeah,
you're awesome, man.
Articulate,
Seriously,
well spoken, and
what did I say? Look at my clients, bro.
Well,
compared to your clients,
it's clearly all Mace. The reason that you're doing well. Yeah,
we're homies. Come on.
Again, I just appreciate that clearly 2.5 years ago wasn't the finish line for you. You've continued to develop, and I'd implore anybody listening to this, client, therapist, or otherwise, to do the same.
Well, and it's not like I think about this all the time. I mean, don't anyone ever stress out about that. You shouldn't, if you're constantly think about not looking at pornography, guess what? You're always thinking about it. You know what I mean? So, it's just a general sense of who I am is always being open to learn and change, and that's okay to do. It's okay to question yourself. Don't be afraid of that.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Boom.
Thank you. Right.
Okay.
Bye.
We got to do the outro.
Alrighty, that does it for this episode of the Guerrilla Social Work Podcast. We want to thank everyone for tuning in. We'd also like to thank Chris for coming on, sharing a bit of his story with us. That's probably one of our favorite ones to do, the whole villains to victory deal. It's just good to see people get an understanding of what that looks like on the tail end, what some of the people are actually going through, and hopefully help to break down some of the stereotypes that a lot of offenders, a lot of clients face when they're going through these situations. So we really appreciate him coming on, sharing that with us. And for the next episode, should be another week or two. We're busy, but we'll be back at it. So in the meantime, share with your friends, let people know, leave comments, send emails. Check us out on your preferred site. It's Guerrilla Social Work, Guerrilla, Guerrilla Social Work Podcast. And then we're up on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all that jazz. So hopefully I said that right. Did I spell that right? GUERREIFCL. What did I say there? I know I said that wrong. So it's GUERRILLA, Guerrilla. Helps if I know. I don't know if anyone knows. So, that being said, look us up, and thank you for tuning in, and thank you for all the support and the downloads so far. See you on the next one.